Hello everybody, it's the Historical Gamer once again, and today we're returning to Strategic Command World War II, World at War. It is episode 83 in this long-running series, and we are closing in on the end of the game. We have 9 turns remaining, but really only 8 because we've already played our most recent turn. We're playing as the Axis powers. We have taken Russia, France, the Low Countries. We have invaded England. We've taken London, Birmingham, Bristol, and we're driving on the alternate capital at Manchester after dealing grievous blows to the Allied forces on the British Isles. Our hope is that next turn we can reduce Manchester, if not next, then the following turn, and then perhaps have enough time to drive north on Edinburgh, which is the final alternate capital for the British Empire. I don't know if they can move back to Canada or not, but their national morale is so low, I think if they lose 2 capitals, they'll certainly throw in the towel. They might throw in the towel after losing 1 more capital. Meanwhile, Russia has fallen, Japan has taken China and India, and they're now in the process of invading, Argentina. They're now in the process of invading Australia. It is the rainy season, so it does slow things down a bit, and there are large numbers of Allied forces both to the north of us and to the south of us at the capital of Canberra or at Brisbane. But we have taken a beachhead in the south at Sydney, and we also have troops driving in toward the interior, taking interior cities like Longreach and driving on Port Auguste. Those formations are going to be suffering supply constraints in the next turn or two, but hopefully in the next 8 turns or so, they can close in on Melbourne and Canberra and successfully reduce the Australian capital. That's the situation right now in September of 1946. The game ends in early 1947, hence the 8 more turns. The only other thing to call out is that Argentina has been busy building an empire. Argentina has built a South American empire, if you will, and has made a lot of progress in that regard. We're even seeing if we can move some of our soldiers here to the border of, what is this? The border of Ecuador, which is currently neutral, but is the only other country that maybe we can potentially get to. The problem is there's no real roads there, so our ability to get north there is going to be somewhat of a challenge. But if we can take Ecuador, then we might be able to drive in on Colombia, which is currently part of the Allied armies, and maybe even Venezuela, although I doubt we have the time to do that. That's the situation right now. We've already done pretty much everything for our turn, so we're going to go ahead and jump in here and move forward to October of 1946 as we move toward the end of this game. We're moving some Italian ships through the Strait of Gibraltar and moving them into the Atlantic Ocean. We have started to reduce the British Empire in Africa. We've taken Sudan. We've taken Egypt and all of the North African coast for the Axis powers, and so that's the current status of the war in Africa. Germany develops anti-tank weapon level 3, which is actually great because we're probably going to be facing enemy tanks this turn. Interestingly enough, there's some research elements in this game, one of them being anti-tank weapons, where infantry just automatically benefit from them when they're facing tanks without you actually having to spend to upgrade. While there's other things like anti-aircraft where you actually have to invest in upgrading your unit's capabilities so that you can leverage that new technology. So I'm not quite sure how they decide which of the attributes are things that you can upgrade to or which of the attributes that you just kind of automatically benefit from, but that's kind of an interesting element to it. All right, so you can see the Americans are moving infantry to the west of Port Auguste. I don't know if that's an attempt to flank us over here or not. American submarines are hitting some Japanese transports that are moving along the coast of Java. They just destroyed a Japanese army unit there, which sucks. We've got 3 more transports on the southern end of Java, and then we've also got several other amphibious task forces which are coming south. Just about the only thing the Americans have left that is a serious threat to us at this moment anyway. They have enough money to build whatever they really want. But the only thing that we believe they presently have enough to do any serious damage to our forces is submarines. But submarines are obviously very vulnerable to enemy... transports are very vulnerable to enemy submarines, so as we try and extend this invasion of Australia, it does pose some challenges for us navigating all these American submarines. As you can see, we just lost 1 unit there in the Sea of Java. Meanwhile, large numbers of Allied air units are getting into action here in the fall of 46 here, trying to slow our advance. Quite a few of them are bombing our forces in France, which is interesting. They did just destroy a tactical bomber unit, so that was a pretty smart move. Meanwhile, American TAC bombers just hit transports of ours off the coast of Brisbane. Again, our troops are moving south, but they are very vulnerable to the enemy right now. Are those paratroopers? Yeah, it looks like the British just called in some paratroopers. Meanwhile, the Americans are landing some troops on the island of New Britain, attacking Rabaul directly. So the first offensive action with amphibious forces that we've seen out of the Americans in quite some time. Meanwhile, I'm guessing that unit that was just pulled out there is pulling south toward Brisbane to try and help hinder our attack on the Australian capital. So we'll see how that plays out when it's our turn again. You can hear American submarines moving around with the little pings of their sonar, and we are progressing here. Hopefully we're at about the end of the turn. Okay. The computer is thinking and purchasing and planning. As a reminder, the game moves in... Okay, so an American fighter unit in the hinterland of Africa was destroyed via attrition. Our ships off the coast of Australia continue to hinder Allied supply by hitting these ports. You can see they're providing zero supply to the Allied effort, and Allied units do require access to working ports, amongst other things, to draw some supplies, so that'll be good for us. Meanwhile, 8 turns remaining. Bristol damage from bombing. 3rd tactical bombers in France destroyed. 1st SNLF Curry force destroyed on long-range transports. Some submarine activity. Germany's getting some new headquarters and heavy tanks. So go ahead and place the heavy tanks. Oh, that's the headquarters. I want to bring this headquarters unit into Norway. I'm just not sure how feasible it is for us to get troops that away. We're going to try and march these additional troops out of Murmansk over here to deal with the British at Narvik. They've got a small force at Narvik that we've just been unable to dislodge due to supply issues, but now that we have that headquarters unit there, hopefully things change a little bit. Meanwhile, in England, let's see, can we take Manchester this turn? A direct assault looks like it would fail. We've got artillery, which we can call up. They've got 2 shell strikes, too, which would be real good. Let's reinforce this tank unit to full. Can we move this headquarters unit to Norwich? We can. Move this artillery to Birmingham? We can. So this artillery can't hit Manchester this turn, but they will be able to hit Manchester next turn. So if we don't knock it out now, we should get to it next turn. Meanwhile, our own bombers can't reach their targets. So we'll have to move these guys across the channel. Okay, we'll move them over there. We'll see if the Allies start bombing our aircraft in England. That would be an interesting move where they do it. Doesn't look like we can get quite that far over, but we can hit these infantry over here. So I guess we could kind of focus our effort a little bit elsewhere, maybe where the enemy is a little bit vulnerable, and in so doing chew up some of their escorts, but then also maybe broaden the front against Manchester, because right now we only have a single hex front against Manchester, and if we destroy some of the flank units, we can reduce the enemy's strength, but we can also improve our odds of taking Manchester, if not this turn, then maybe next turn. So you can see here, this unit is going to get hit pretty hard if we attack it. So we'll go ahead and do that with the infantry. We'll do it with the Panthers. Alright, so then we'll move this mechanized force forward. Attack these American strategic bombers. Pull these guys back, move the heavy tank unit here. Oh, that guy could go there, theoretically. Yeah, I guess we'll do it. So we'll attack here. hold him in place. Let's see here. Do we want to rebuild these guys, or do we want to go in and attack Manchester directly? I think this turn might actually be maybe wiser to be used as a reinforcement turn. Reinforce some of our fighter aircraft. You know, let's just see if we can start reducing these tanks. The Americans have some escorts on some, or actually those are British escorts on board a escort carrier, and boy, those escorts got mauled. They lost 7 casualties in that raid. Meanwhile, our bombers did hit the target at Manchester and reduced the enemy fortification by 1. A second raid reduced it by 1 more, and there goes essentially all of their defensive bonuses being in Manchester. Our tactical bombers continue. It looks like we already wore out their fighter aircraft with our bombing raids here on the eastern coast near the Wash. So that looks like actually it paid off pretty handsomely. Is that all of our attack air that can hit? It looks like it is. So I think we'll go ahead and attack here. It looks like our armor destroyed the American armor in Manchester. Meanwhile, our armor can move forward. Destroy these American fighters. Destroy these American tactical bombers. We can move some of our other units forward here. We'll move these Panthers forward here to take Sheffield. Then these infantry can move forward. That'll cut off this British infantry corps, if that's what we want to do. We'll do that. Attack these American infantry here to the north. That's kind of a spoiling attack. Oh, the question is... Alright, so move these guys over here. Meanwhile, we now have the British boxed in here to the west of Manchester. I think all those troops are going to be forced to surrender. Doesn't look like I can move into that adjacent hex, though. Because of the terrain, I guess? Shit. We can move these mechanized troops. We just lose their ability to attack. What about these guys? Move anybody else? We move these infantry forward here. So we'll do that. Meanwhile, we'll attack with this army against these British paratroopers. Move our own paratroopers forward. Destroy them. Move our mechanized force forward up here. And just like that, we're getting a little bit of forward momentum here in England. Manchester, the alternate capital, has fallen. And we're driving north just a few hexes away from Edinburgh. Things get very narrow. We don't have a lot of room to maneuver as we kind of move up this away. We could try and reduce these British troops this turn. In theory, it's not a bad idea because it does save... I don't want the casualties, but actually on the flip side, I'm going to go ahead and attack now because even if I take those casualties, I think we're better off by taking those casualties now. Because it'll... Essentially, we'll get... If we don't use the attacks now, we'll lose them. So, you know, we have 2 attacks per turn. If we don't use them this turn, then, you know, we don't have 4 next turn. And I want to reduce these guys as quickly as I can. So I'll trade the casualties for a more swift reduction of the enemy. Okay. Do we have any other troops we want to send? Send these guys via transport. This heavy artillery. Might take him too long to get to the front. Front might be too narrow, too. We could land in the north, maybe up near Inverness. Kind of have a 2-pronged assault. We'd need a headquarters unit up there, which we can have. So we can put those infantry and these pioneers on board transports. No sense in moving them quite yet. We can move the headquarters unit next turn, and then maybe we'll move them to the northern coast of England and try and reduce the enemy there. go ahead and reinforce our subs that are badly damaged. Okay. I don't know why I can't attack that American carrier. It's in a hostile port. You'd think it would be easy to attack and destroy it. Alright, hunt. We'll set these guys over here. Raider. Alright, so these guys can move to the nearer raider spot. These guys will set mode to hunt as well. They'll move up here. So we're getting as many vessels on their supply lines as we can. And that's good for that. Meanwhile, I think we'll move those motor torpedo boats to the north, sort of scouting out ahead of our troops where they're going to be going. Move some of our fighters closer to the front. Move these guys to Plymouth, just to ensure the Americans don't land in our rear and take a key city. Suppose they could do the same thing to Brest in France. But that's a little less likely. Okay, we'll move these fighters into England. We should have overwhelming air superiority at this point, especially with destroying those 2 Allied air units and then the badly damaging the medium bombers. These guys should all just fold next turn really easily. They have no port to draw supplies from. And then we should just be able to turn north and deal with the tough terrain of Scotland as we try and move north and take the last British capital, assuming they're still fighting. Okay. So that's that in England. Meanwhile, I can't pull these tanks back. I can only drive them further into the desert with no supply. That's great. They're going to start losing attrition, I think. Okay. All right, so we're moving on Berbera. All right. Let's move these troops further south. What's here? Italian East Africa? That's a weird way the map breaks it out, though. So we're going to try and take Berba next turn. Berbera, which is the capital of British Somaliland. Meanwhile, these forces are massing to drive south. I don't know if we have time to get to another British colony in the south, but it sure be nice to take like Rhodesia or something like that in the south of Africa. I think that pretty much does it for over here. We could go for Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, where are you at? Here you're at. You're 13% allies. I'm going to declare war on you. We'll see how strong their forces are. Oh no, enemy contact at the oil wells in Dammam. And we quickly overrun them. Okay. Wow. So they do have a reasonable number of... I shouldn't say wow, but they do have a reasonable number of garrison units by the look of it. The thing is, we're easily overrunning them because they're all still 0 technology. We can rail the Turkish army south here as well to assist, since Turkey joined us last turn. So that'll be useful. So we'll rail one Turkish army over there. We'll move another Turkish army over here. Meanwhile, the Turkish Navy has also joined us. We can go ahead and upgrade the battlecruiser here. This is the battlecruiser Guben, I believe. It's renamed, obviously, with a Turkish name, but I believe this is the battlecruiser Guben, which was given to Turkey at the outbreak of World War I and remained in the Turkish Navy for many years after. Trabzon. Alright, so that's that. Meanwhile, what else are we doing over here? Alright, so there's subs. Got a bunch of troops coming ashore. I'm assuming these guys can't really move. Yeah, these guys have 0 supply, so they'll move and take Port August. That should help with the supply situation. Moving the headquarters unit south slowly. I should pull him back here. Alright, so we're going to have trouble driving inland from here due to supply constraints. Although it looks like we probably have a clear railway now between Alice Springs. East side, move inland there. We'll keep these fighters around this headquarter unit here to maybe pounce on this American Army unit. We have now cut Australia in two, driving south toward Port August. We now have a clear line between us and them. Okay, I don't actually want to land there. I think what I want to do with this amphibious force... Can these guys give me any indication of what's around here? Can we land at... Oh shit, it's a headquarter unit. Alright, well that was silly. Can we change these guys to amphibious? th Regional, is that another headquarters unit? Alright, I'm going to try and move my transports around Australia. I think it'll be faster to have them to go around Australia and see if we can get to the capital. Okay, I think there's another headquarters unit, of which we have way too many in Australia right now. But anyway, they're moving around the island. Those guys are going to land. We'll operate these aircraft south. Reinforce these guys to max strength. We're going to move... Let's move these guys over here. Move this armor north. Alright. So one thing we are doing here is we're trying to reduce the strength of the Allies in the south here. So we just destroyed an American army to the south of Brisbane. It's a little bit away from our primary objective of Canberra, but until the sky's clear and we can bring the air units into play down here, we're not going to have a lot of success driving against a well-supplied and dug-in American unit. Meanwhile, the troops in Brisbane are not well-supplied. They don't have easy access to a headquarters, so we're sort of taking a target of opportunity and destroying them where we can. Meanwhile, the American troops that landed on New Britain landed without a headquarters unit, and so they have no supply and are easy targets there. We can actually move our SNLF force here and destroy them. So wasn't, strictly speaking, my intent to use amphibious troops to finish off an American unit that landed, but we did it. So that's good. The first Japan... Do we want to land at Rockhampton? Can we even do that? Oh, nice. Okay, so we've got a mechanized force here that just landed at Rockhampton. So now we've got sort of a double envelopment of the Australians down here in the south. Okay. Alright, I'm not going to land there, obviously, against American infantry. But we're trying to bring more troops south. I'm a little bit scatterbrained, perhaps, in the way I'm going about it. Go ahead and reinforce this carrier. It'd be nice if we could reinforce the carrier and the aircraft in the same turn, but apparently we can't. Alas, such is war. Meanwhile, we're reinforcing these ships because For all we know, the Americans are going to show up again with another large force for us to deal with. That's happened more times than I can count in this game. So we'll get everybody back up to full strength or near full strength. Meanwhile, we now have jet fighters on our carriers. Move this to the south. Move some of our vessels to the south. Okay, they still have troops here. Doesn't look like they have anything at Townsville from a shipping perspective. So Rockhampton fell, although unfortunately it doesn't actually have a port, so that's going to be a supply issue for our mechanized troops there. Can't prepare these guys? Huh. Alright. Can't bomb anyone here because we have no supply. Moving those troops south. And our strategic bombers are going to operate all the way to Australia, just to Sydney. We've got headquarters unit here, so we're going to build up as much air as we can to obliterate the enemy as soon as we can. Okay. Alright, so that's the situation here. I really wish I hadn't landed those guys down here in the south. Maybe it'll divert the Allies to send at least some troops to Perth. Maybe Perth is open, although I doubt it. Alright, so that's Japan pretty much. We've almost reduced Riyadh. In the southwest with Argentina, we're going to move these troops. They're not going to be able to move more than one turn per hex. They're never going to get there. At the very least, we can declare war on Paraguay. It's a very man-in-the-high castle type environment where it's like, all right, we're literally going for global domination. And the capital of Paraguay shall fall. Oh, shit. We couldn't get them there quick enough. All right, well, maybe it doesn't fall this turn, but it will next. They have no troops left. All right, so I think that's going to do it. I know we still have money, but I don't really... There's no point in buying things at this stage because nothing's going to arrive in time. I don't have enough troops left on the continent to go after Vichy or after anybody else. We've got a ton of troops in England. Manchester fell. If we take a look at the reports here, we go to national morale here. We take a look at national morale for Britain. It's already down to 12%. The fall of Manchester may drive it even further, but that'll be the topic for discussion in episode 84, which will be our next episode. Until next time, however, this is the Historical Gamer saying once again, thank you guys for watching, and I'm out.